Welcome to this explainer. Okay, let's dive right into this staggeringly massive event. We're looking at one of the largest school examination boards in the entire world, an institution that's been grading students for close to a century. Recently, they shifted their high school answer sheet grading to a fully digital platform. And, well, almost immediately, that system was cracked wide open. So today, we're going to break down the anatomy of this disaster and figure out exactly how the CBSE website hacked, or rather, how it got hacked so effortlessly. So really grasp the gravity of this, you've got to understand the sheer scale. We're talking about 2 million, nearly 2 million students. That's 2 million scanned exams and marks, all digitized and sitting on a single online platform. And these aren't just numbers on a spreadsheet, right? These are college admissions, scholarships, entire career trajectories, all bottlenecked through one centralized portal. The stakes here literally could not be higher. Which leads us to the big burning question. How do you hack 2 million exam records? Now, if you've been wondering exactly how this portal made its way into the global news cycle, the answer really isn't what you might think. When we hear about massive data breaches, our minds kind of automatically jump to, movie-style, state-sponsored hacker groups typing furiously, using exotic zero-day exploits. But the shocking reality here, it's much, much simpler. And honestly, it's a whole lot more concerning for anyone building software today. Now, what's really interesting is the exact path the attackers took through the system. Here is our roadmap for today. We're going to cover 1, the massive breach, 2, broken front door authentication, 3, the #1 API flaw, 4, wide open cloud storage, 5, hacking versus denial of service, and finally, fixing the trust boundary. Section 1, the massive breach, myth versus reality. Let's strip away all the complex jargon and just look at the plain facts of what happened here. Like we just talked about, we usually imagine cyber warfare as highly sophisticated, right? But the reality? Plain text passwords and incredibly basic web security flaws. No advanced techniques were used here. None. The attackers literally just read the website's own open code and casually walked right through unlocked digital doors. I mean, we are talking about flaws so basic, you'd find them in the first couple chapters of a Web Security 101 textbook. Moving on to Section 2, broken front door authentication. Letting the client decide. This brings us to the first major architectural flaw on the front end. So the absolutely crucial point here is this concept, the trust boundary. This is that strict line separating untrusted user environments, like your web browser, from the trusted system, like the backend server. Now, any code running on the user's machine, meaning all that front-end JavaScript, is fully under the user's control. Putting security checks on the user's browser is literally like letting a student grade their own test. They can just intercept the results. In this breach, the server sent back a response, and the front-end code decided if the login was a success or a failure. An attacker could easily just open up standard browser developer tools and flip a fail to a success. Boom! The one-time password check completely skipped over. But let's look at how secure authentication is actually supposed to work. Step 1. The client sends their credentials. Step 2. The server, and absolutely only the server, validates the one-time password. Step 3. The server issues a secure token. See, the server has to be the brain of the operation here. The absolute second your security relies on the client's web browser behaving honestly, you've already lost the game. Oh, and it actually gets worse. Sitting right there inside that same untrusted front-end code was a hard-coded master password, just sitting there in plain text. A lot of junior developers kind of think that if they bundle or minify their JavaScript, it somehow hides the secrets. But guys, minification is not encryption. Anyone can just right-click, open the source tab in their browser, and read the whole thing. Leaving a password in the front-end code is essentially the same as publishing it to the entire internet. Which brings us to Section 3, the #1 API flaw, broken Object Level Authorization. This is where the real data exposure actually happened. To really understand this layer, we need to quickly separate two terms that get blurred together all the time: authentication and authorization. Authentication is proving who you are. Think of it like the bouncer at a club checking your ID at the door. Authorization, on the other hand, is what you're actually allowed to do or see once you're inside. The CBSE portal? Well, it basically knew who logged in, sure, but it completely forgot to check if that person was actually allowed to see the specific record they were asking for. And this leads right into a vulnerability known as IDOR, or BOLA, broken Object Level Authorization. Imagine logging in as yourself, glancing up at the web address bar and seeing your own student roll number at the end of the URL. What happens if you just change that number by one digit? In a secure system, you'd get an error. But in this system,
The server happily handed over someone else's personal data, their account details, and even their answer sheets. An attacker could just incrementally change those numbers in the link and effortlessly pull up thousands of other students' private records. No wonder BOLA is literally #1 on the OASP list of API security flaws. Let's move to Section 4, Wide Open Cloud Storage, the ultimate misconfiguration. This is where we hit the climax of the disaster.
So all those scanned answer sheets had to be stored somewhere, right? They were sitting in an Amazon Web Services S3 bucket, which is basically just a giant storage folder on the internet. And this setup right here tells you everything you need to know. A secure S3 bucket is set to private by default. The CBSE bucket, publicly readable. But the absolute worst part is that bottom row. A feature called List Objects v2 was fully enabled, meaning an attacker didn't even have to bother guessing the individual web links for each student's exam sheet. Nope, the bucket effectively handed them a perfectly organized open inventory list of every single file inside it. They could just methodically paginate through and download the entire batch of exam sheets from start to finish. It is, for sure, the ultimate misconfiguration.
Next up, Section 5, Hacking versus Denial of Service. Let's clear up a bit of public confusion around what happened next.
When the portal finally came back online, officials claimed the system was hit by 1.5 million requests in just 2 minutes. Now, what they're describing there is a DDoS attack, a distributed denial of service. It's really important to note this is not about sneaking in to steal data. It's purely an attack on availability. Think of it like a massive, coordinated crowd of people physically blocking the front doors to a building so that the legitimate customers can't even get inside.
And this brilliantly illustrates the difference between the two events. Vulnerability exploitation is sneaking through the back door in the dead of night to steal sensitive files. A DDoS attack is crushing the servers with raw, overwhelming traffic just to bring the website down entirely. Sometimes people kind of think one cancels out the other or that they're the same thing. They definitely aren't. A system can absolutely suffer from having its private data stolen while simultaneously having its servers crushed by a DDoS attack. They are two totally different problems that require two entirely different sets of defenses.
Finally, we arrive at Section 6, Fixing the Trust Boundary. Let's talk about solutions. So after looking at all these broken layers, what must developers and organizations actually learn from this to prevent it from ever happening again? The answer comes down to a principle called defense in depth. Relying on just one single security check is never enough. First, you must establish a hard trust boundary at the server level, period. Second, you've got to scope your database queries so a user can only pull a record if they actually own it. Third, that cloud storage needs to be locked down tight, using short-lived temporary links for access. Fourth, passwords must be hashed using strong, modern, slow algorithms, definitely not outdated ones like MD5. And finally, you need rate limiting and robust logging to catch any abnormal behavior early. Security has to be layered, you guys, across the front end, the server, the database, and the cloud, the whole shebang.
In fact, if you take absolutely nothing else away from the front-end failures we've talked about today, please remember this one core philosophy. Treat your front end as a display layer that can lie to you, because trust me, it can and it will. Any code running on a user's machine is fundamentally untrustworthy. You cannot trust the client, period. End of story. So I want to leave you with this powerful question to ask yourself about the systems you're either using or building right now. On every single request, is your server verifying not only who the user is, but whether they are explicitly allowed to access that specific resource? Get that habit right, draw that trust boundary clearly, and you'll prevent some of the most devastating security breaches on the internet. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and stay curious.